Hey there, all of you amazing women. We want to welcome you to the Lioness Summit. My name is Darla Morrison, and I'll be your host. Here at the Lioness Summit, we like to bring together courageous women who have been through a lot of things in their life, and they didn't stop there. They just kept pushing forward, and they failed forward, they moved forward, and then they made an amazing discovery that through all of that struggle, they became world changers. And they have wanted to share their message with you, which is why they're here with us. And I want to thank y'all for being here. If you'd like to, go to our Facebook page and like us, and check us out on Instagram as well as LinkedIn. And on all of that, we also have our website, which is lioness-pr.com. And we would love for you to have taken a look at all of the speakers that we've had and what we're having to offer for you. Today, I have the honor and the privilege of bringing in one of my dear, sweet friends, Miss Becky Lehman. She has just been a force of change for me. And I would love to, I just want to pack everything. And we are going to be doing, this is our second, or not a second take, but this is going to be our addition to, we've done this in two parts, because we had so much we wanted to share with you. So if some things look like, oh, wait a minute, that was a little different from one to the next, it's because we had just had so much information we wanted to bring in to you, because today's subject is about divorce and what Becky and her husband have created a space for as we go through that. And so just Becky, thank you for being here.
I am so glad. It's such a privilege to be with you and get to know all these ladies, even if it's through a live format like this. And I hope at the end, if any of you ever want to talk personally with us, to do so. Darla has been through our program, and we are passionate about providing a safe place to process post-divorce, to go forward in a healthy way. We say you repeat what you do not repair. So that's our goal, is to really give a safe retreat to be renewed and restored. So glad to be here today.
Thank you so much. A lot of people don't want to breach this topic, especially when you're in a faith-based group, because the church doesn't know what to do, and the church didn't know what to do with me and so many women. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I think the church is trying to figure out, and I do appreciate what divorce care does offer. But it's got to be so much more, and there's a lot of healing. And what we're going to be sharing with you listeners today is that whether you have been through a divorce, whether you're going through it right now, we were just talking about that, God's in the redemption business. He is in the building back. He's in the unshattered business. So when you're faced with difficulties, including divorce, your life is not over. It's going to be okay. And what you learn in the process can make you a better person. But more important, your ministry is not over. Your purpose as a Christian is not finished. And I want to say that again. Your purpose as a Christian is not finished just because you go through a divorce. And what I have found through WildStream was a total delight and a surprise. So Becky, we're going to get into that in just a minute. I would like for us to know a little bit more about you. Becky has an adorable dog that we all have loved, and she's her dog's in the pictures that you'll be seeing. And she lives in this most beautiful place in Mont Eagle, where the WildStream Retreat is housed. And she has an amazing husband, and her two daughters are like crazy fun, and grandbabies, and you also have a blended family that is just so, I mean, you're just the neatest group. Share with us about you.
Oh, where do you want me to start, Darla? That's a hard one.
You're a Southern girl, and you did go to Samford University.
Yeah, that's true. I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, and like she said, I went to Samford University in Birmingham. I actually majored in French. I was a French missionary for a year. Darla and I just spoke before we came on air. That was a life-changing adventure, especially for a Southern girl. They didn't understand my Southern French drawl, but I got by a little bit.
Mine, the extent of mine is oui, monsieur. The only thing that I heard from Beauty and the Beast, I think.
Well, mine, but I slaughtered their beautiful language, but they loved me. I tried to smile through it. After I came back from that year in 1980, I met my first husband, and it was a whirlwind romance. I was young and I should have taken more time. That's we always say, time is your friend. I did not take the time, and I knew on my honeymoon I probably made a mistake. But as a Christian believer, I believed time, prayer. There really wasn't much counseling around in 1980, but you start having children and you get absorbed with all that. So fast forward, we moved to Texas and raised our three children. Had our three children in Texas, raised them. Started having some issues. I have a prodigal son, and we moved to Tennessee to get closer to family. And there was lots of problems, like I said, from day one in the marriage. And we did end up, when counseling was available, probably was in counseling 25 out of 29 years. We tried marriage retreats. There was a lot of toxicity. There was a lot of unhealthy behavior that got even more escalated by other things in the marriage, till it finally came to a turning point in August of 2009. It got where I realized I was putting my husband's truth before God's truth.
And let me ask you out there. So how many years had y'all been married?
We were married 29 years.
29 years. Okay. And that's important. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay. And in August of 2009, things had gotten really, really bad. And I realized my two oldest kids were having life altering issues because of the toxicity of our home, just how abusive it was, verbal abuse. This was a man that was in church and serving in church, but behind closed doors, it was a totally different story. And I was setting a horrible example for my girls that was okay. I was enabling very unhealthy behavior. And we all have to take ownership for our part. And that was my main ownership. But I finally got my brave on. And the night of August 13th, 2009, my 15-year-old and I, my daughter and I stepped out, having no clue what the future would bring. I found out within that night, I kept hearing in my spirit. I've never heard God's voice audibly, but I heard, get out now. It was almost like a mantra in my spirit. Mm-hmm. And I got out, and God just started from that point forward. I cannot even explain to you. It would take 2 hours. But God just started providing. I went out of town for a couple of days, like, Lord, what do I do? Where do I go? And I knew I couldn't live in a hotel with my daughter. And the second I came back and got gas, when I was coming back into Nashville, a friend called me and said, what's going on? And I just started crying. She said, y'all are welcome at my house. That led to another stranger taking me in. I got an attorney, and my attorney said, you've got to come back in the house, because there's a lot of legal things I won't go into. And I was like, it took me 29 years to get my brave on to leave. I'm not going back in by myself. And that's where my lionesses stepped in. I started calling these dear friends going, I'm scared to death. And my best friend from Sanford, 40, now it's 40 years. It was probably like 30 years later. When I called and said, I need somebody, she said, we'll talk when I get there. And she got on an airplane 2 hours later from Florida and flew to be with me for a week. And then a friend from Texas found out about it, and she flew to be with me a week. And then a friend from Alabama drove in. I mean, just one after another for the 6 weeks that I had to be in that house with a lot of fear and trepidation. We had to call the police twice. But God overcame that fear and let me know He was going to provide in ways that I had never seen before. And I just have some incredible friends that to this day, not only were they friends to me, they mothered my daughter when I didn't even have the strength to hardly mother her. They loved on her. They let her know it was not her fault. And they just helped her be courageous as well.
When you talk about that, I get very emotional because I've been through similar situation. And I know a lot of women listening can relate, and it resonates in their heart, and it is difficult. The courage that I see in a lot of the people that come on here, I'm amazed at, and yours is no different, Becky. Becky, thank you for sharing that with us. I am reminded of how, as we share our stories with others, and we share it with truth and love, and we also share it with hope, but it does help people to understand it's okay to deal with your messy parts of your story, as well as understand it's not your final story. And I believe you have even said that someone had told you, this is, this isn't all of your story. This is just one part, and it's going to go on, and there's more things coming afterwards. And I love the beauty of that, how God does that for all of us in every situation. And Becky and I have shared how even it's difficult to get out of situations like that. And so we want to encourage anyone listening, a situation where you're not safe, get help, get out of there. But more importantly, we want you to understand God never in his word from Genesis to Revelation ever expects you or ask you to stay where you're not safe. So I just want to make sure that you understand where our hearts are. We're all for great, healthy marriages. And that is what their retreat is for, is to rebuild so that we can get back with our lives, get back with our ministries, and get back with understanding relationships, not just with a future spouse, but with everyone around us, because until you heal yourself and set up good, healthy boundaries, and you take ownership of what is yours. WildStream Retreat was such a delight for me, and it was a surprise for me. I had been, I think at the time when I came through, had been out of the situation between just before the divorce and then after the divorce. It had been, I think, like 6 years. When I came, I had already gone through divorce recovery. And when I came to WildStream, I was so blown away with the beauty of nature around it, the beauty of the place itself. Becky and Daniel have been so intentional at every this, and your ministry continued as a couple. Y'all have been ministering to so many people, not just for women. This is a ministry for men as well, because men go through really bad divorces too. Not all men cause a divorce. We're not male bashing by any means. When you go through this retreat, it takes you to a totally different level of healing and also of responsibility. And that's what I love about, there's a balance. It's okay, you are going to be okay, but buckle up. This is what you need to be doing, which is what makes you a better person. No one is going to become a better person just by having somebody just hug on them. We do need the hugs, but then we need to take action. And I want to ask you, how did you and Daniel come up with a format that blended both?
I will say he did more than I did. I mean, he had a heart for this from the day that he went through his divorce in 2001. It happened, he was married almost 17 years to his childhood sweetheart. His divorce was unwanted by him. We always say it takes two to get married, it only takes one to get divorced. It happened right before 9/11. He lost not only his marriage, but his ministry. He had been a pastor. And he said that was very difficult, especially in 2001. Things have changed a little bit in 20 years. But he started putting on paper, he started writing devotionals for people that had gone through divorce, just writing. He had a dream, he had a vision of having a place, a safe place for people to come and process post-divorce, and figure out, so you don't make the mistakes again, that you can go into a new life, that you can embrace your singleness. It's so important because so many of the people we deal with have been married 25, 30, 35, 40. We've had 5 over 50 years of marriage. And they don't know what to do. I mean, it's a death line, as we said. They just have no clue what to do, where to pick up the pieces. And we let them know this is not your obituary. It's just one dark chapter in a glorious novel. You got a lot more life. And we actually do some exercises out here, some visual exercises, because those to me last longer than just lots of words. But it's just over and over and over again, we see people come in on a Friday night and leave a different person on Sunday. And I just say it's the most rewarding thing. We're exhausted on Sunday afternoon, but when we see what God show up and do what he does, we are blown away. We see people reunited with their faith. We've seen People come to the Lord. We just see a transformation into a deeper walk with the Lord. When my husband is a doctorate in what the Bible has to say about divorce. What I mean by that, he went to seminary. He's got an MDiv, but he said you barely cover that subject. It's just like getting a general MD, when you're a doctor, but you have to go back and research it. And the number of books he has read and studied on biblical theology, and he has torn apart every verse and has learned to put it into an appropriate biblical viewpoint that shows the whole of God's plan. And it's remarkable. It sets people free when they see it.
Becky and Daniel also led divorce recovery. And before they started the retreat, even went to these leaders and said, this is what we want to do as a step, when you step out of divorce recovery, to come into us as a continuation, as the next level in. They have dissected everything that Becky and Daniel have done, making sure that it was coherent with God's word. It is kingdom minded, and it is aimed at healing a person, healing people. If you've ever been on an Emmaus walk, this is what you do. When you go there, the minute they greet you at the car, they take your luggage, our meals are provided, you are prayed over all weekend. You have somebody praying for you the whole time you're there. And there is a lot of opportunity for you to absorb in between all of the sessions, what we're learning, and how God takes your brokenness and turns it into something just magnificent. One of how we want to guard ourselves. We don't want anyone to know we've ever been through brokenness, because that's ugly. It's messy. It's not pretty. It's not put together. People think you're not professional. But until you go through some brokenness, you're not ever going to realize your potential. And I don't want to say it humbles you, because it's more than that. It just changes your perspective of life as a human and the worth of other people around you. Becky, show us, if you don't mind, give us a demonstration.
Well, let me just tell you a couple of things. That when God gave me this illustration, he just got amazing. But we often think when something's broken, we can't use it anymore. That's what we think, a broken plate or a broken mug or whatever. That's not how God views brokenness. That God cannot use his people until we're fully broken. And you see that from Genesis to Revelation. If he was going to use a man greatly, he had to break him. So the very thing we naturally resist, being broken or humbled, is precisely what God wants to use for us to experience what he's trying to do. There is a purpose for brokenness and a broken heart. Sometimes God has to break us so that he can find his way into our heart. And brokenness happens in a soul, but so the power of God can happen in a soul. So it's precisely your brokenness that he wants to reassure you that you are his beloved. So I don't know how many of y'all, but I love chocolate chip cookies. So it's hard for you to see, but I'm trying to do the best I can. So here's the stick of butter you need in your chocolate chip cookies. And here's an egg. And you've got salt. And you've got some sugar cane. And you've got wheat. And oh, wait a second, we're missing. Got our nuts, pecans, and we have our chocolate. But if I tried to get this and put all those ingredients as you see them right there in a blender, it's going to be a big bad mess, and you can't use it or anything. And so to have that delicious, yummy, warm, tasty cookie, every one of these things has to be broken. That sugar cane has to be crushed to get that sweet sugar. The wheat has to be thrashed. The eggs have to be broken, and that ugly old shell of an old life has to be thrown away. Even the butter or the oil has to be pressed down and made either from cream and churning up what is not supposed to be there. I mean, there's just so many analogies. You can go on and on and on. The chocolate is made from a cacao bean that has to be roasted and put under fire. And so once you get all these ingredients, and I love You got to add some baking powder or baking soda. That's your leavening ingredient. And what's neat about a leavening ingredient, it's made to soften us, but it only can be softened if it goes through heat. And so once again, God's just saying, I want to soften your heart, but I got to put you and mold you and then put you through the fire. So once you get a real batter going, you got your cookies. And there again, God's molding you. You have to kind of make them big and round so they're going to be good.
Those look good, by the way.
And then you put them in a hot oven. And you don't put them in too long, because God never puts us in a fiery trial to burn us, but to refine us. And he sits by that oven. He doesn't go watch a TV show or go off. He's right there. He is right there, and he knows the precise time. He kind of looks in, maybe today when I was making these cookies, I looked in and says, maybe it needs just another minute or two. And then when it's ready, he brings out this big plate of good chocolate chip.
Eating the chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah. So, and and the neat thing, the heat brings out an aroma. So when we surrender to what God's doing in our lives, he wants to bring an aroma to a broken world around us that needs to see that the anchor holds amidst the storm, that he is God no matter what. I remember when I first started having issues in my marriage and with my prodigal son, I went to a counselor, and I was like, I'll give my son as an example, because maybe not all of y'all have a broken marriage, but that I was like, my son's starting to do bad in school. And the counselor said, then, I said, I'm so afraid of all these things. And so he said, well, take what's going on and name something. I said, I'm afraid he's going to fail. He said, then what? Well, then he'll get in with the wrong crowd. Then what? Well, then he'll start doing drugs. Then what? Then he might overdose. Then what? Then he might die. Then what? And when it took me to the worst thing that could happen, or you can do it in a marriage, you can do it in a financial thing, I just said, well, then I will pick up the pieces and I'll move on, and I'm going to be okay, because God is still God. And that really lessened the fear. When I first went through that separation and I left, and I told you somebody took me into their home. We were on a walk, and this lady, sometimes God uses total strangers. She turned to me and she said, what are you so afraid of? And I think it's that whole face your fear. Somebody gave me this years ago. It's just kind of like a little coin. And on one side, you can get something and write this yourself.
It says fear, and the other side says faith.
Faith. And that if you're looking at fear in the face, you're not going to see your faith. But if you are staring at faith and what God can do through this, it's going to overtake the fear. And so God loves brokenness. I mean, we are so afraid to tell our stories. And that's when we're, transparent with people. That's when I'm hurting, I don't want to go run to somebody that's got it all together. I want to run to somebody that I know will understand.
That gets it. And that's the scary part of being vulnerable, because we've all been through that. And thank you, Brene Brown, for helping us all deal with that. So it's easy watching somebody else be vulnerable, and you feel for them, and you're like, you're in their corner, you're their, I'm your best cheerleader, and I'm all for you being vulnerable. But then when the light is turned on us and we've got to be vulnerable, it's like, but I don't want you to see that on me. The only time you can learn to be vulnerable and let your guard down is when things are going difficult. One thing that I do appreciate about what y'all do, what you do teach, is community. And that's what we do here on the Lioness Summit. That's my heartbeat, is us being there for one another. And that's why I love the lioness. She never hunts alone. There's always at least 3 to 8 lionesses hunting together, always, because they all have a different part. And thank you, Becky and I were talking about that and sharing about the beauty of that and how God wants that for us. Whether you're an entrepreneur, and you and Daniel have started over and started your own business. I really feel like the heart of God is an entrepreneur. Let's take this idea, let's have this solution, and let's go with it and meet needs through that. And here at the Lioness Summit, coming together with other women to be there for one another, shine the spotlight on when they're doing glorious, and also being there for them when things are very difficult. And you learn how to let go of things. And I love how y'all walk through so many different physical opportunities of showing and demonstrating God's love. You and Daniel have a beautiful gift in that. And thank you. And I want to encourage anyone who, if you've been through a divorce, please take a look at this. It doesn't matter how many years out, whether you're going through it right now or you've been through it, or if you know someone who is facing this, I would encourage you to please take a look at this. And if you are there and you would love to help support WildStream, please take a look at them as well. And they have an opportunity there for you to give back. Becky, there's also something I wanted you to share.
First of all, let me say, couples do not come through WildStream. It's an individual thing. We live on a beautiful cliff that's about 60, 70 feet high. And we say couples, conflict, and cliffs do not go together. So we have actually had ex-wife come through, or the ex, and then they've gone back and told their former spouse, you need to do this. And so we've probably had about 10 that we've had one of the parties come, and then much later the other party came. But several times when people would call us to come, I would say, I don't think you're quite there. I think there's hope for your marriage. Yeah. And there are, Focus on the Family has some weekend retreats. We are big supporters. There's actually a group called the Hideaway Experience, and they have an 85% success rate when marriages are on the brink. I mean, they're literally last heartbeat. So our heart is for restoration. Our heart is for redemption. But that's God. You look through Scripture, you have redeeming stories, and you have stories that they went a different way, but they was for a better purpose. And even if we don't see it right now, it's for a better purpose. And one thing I want to say is, we call divorce the Mount Everest of life experiences. And the reason we call it that is because it's one of the most difficult things you will ever go through. And my brother-in-law had an opportunity to climb to the base camp of Mount Everest. And he said, you cannot go up there without a Sherpa. You have to have a Sherpa that carries your load. So we want to use that analogy. And so you get to come to WildStream once. It's a one-time retreat for your first time. But when you come, as she said, people are going to come out and take your bags. And they're called our Sherpas. And a Sherpa is somebody that's come through our program. They're a minimum 1 year outside of their divorce. And they're kind of a healing healer. They are coming back to say, I want to give to you. I want to pay it forward for the people that were here for me. So these Sherpas, they come back and they have their own, it's called Advance, because it's time to advance and move forward and help others. So they have things on how to date again after 25 or 30 years, or how to deal with loneliness or depression, how to take better care of your body. Lots of good subject matter that they're self-led and facilitated.
One thing that I wanted to go back and revisit, we had mentioned this briefly at the beginning. You had been in a 29-year marriage, and so many people had no idea what you and your family were going through. And I know a lot of people, me included, have that part of a testimony that not everybody understood what all was going on, because you, as a woman, we like to hide everything, and you get into some really negative habits doing that, because you learn not to be authentic, because you're afraid that if everybody saw everything, they would see everything. So you learn how to put up walls. Coming through WildStream helped me to understand some of the walls I still had in place and how I had guarded. I thought it was just, and I look at this, so this is something very important. And I've done a lot of, my psychology background did this. So coming out of any situation like that, and I'm going to say trauma, you are in survival mode, which is what you need to do. You should be, because you need to you need to have an awareness of everything around you.
Right.
And that's just a season. When you stay in that survival mode, when out of the season that you need to be, it's like walking around with your life jacket while you're eating at a restaurant. Okay, that's great while you're out on the water. That life jacket's important while you're boating, but not while you're eating dinner. You don't need it sitting in a chair. And so getting past that feeling like you got to be in survival mode is what I learned to let go of. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. I thought I was just, I thought I was fine. Okay, I'm just going to say that. I thought I was fine. When you go through this retreat, you get to see things like that, and they help you to understand how to move forward in a healthy, God-centered way.
Somebody taught me this when I was going through this most difficult time. It's so easy to say, he did this, he did that. Because people are going to say, why are you getting a divorce? Godly counselor I was seeing at the time, he came up with instead of going, nobody wants to hear all the junk.
No.
And we came up with one sentence, and I have shared it with so many women. I was living a lie in my marriage, and I choose not to do that anymore.
And then leave it at that.
And I left. And then the next question was, did you go to Christian counseling? And I said, we exhausted counseling. But I love the I statements, because it's like a lioness. It puts you back, you're not the victim.
Exactly. Move from victim into I am okay. I'm not just fine. I'm really healthy now, and I am moving forward.
Yes.
I appreciate that. And y'all, thank y'all for all the healing, all the prayers that you pour over people. Going back that Sunday, I was just blown away and was so grateful for everything I learned that I even had an opportunity to help sponsor people that had already been through a divorce and were still struggling with things. It's not like they were about to go through a divorce. They had already been through it for years. They had been and we were talking about this earlier, they had been in long marriages. They had raised kids. What do you do now? Where do you go in life? How do you reestablish yourself? And the same thing, like you said earlier, Becky, they came in Friday one way, and they would call, every one of them called me Sunday coming back saying, thank you. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to come back and help get other people that I know that have been through divorces and they're still hurting. I want them to go through this too. A lot of yours is word of mouth. True?
Oh, yeah. And I'm just going to tell you, we were out in Albuquerque at a hot air balloon ride, and I handed my phone to a guy to take our picture, found out that he and his wife, it was a second marriage. They taught divorce care, and they send us a contribution every year. That's why it's a pay it forward. We keep the cost extremely low because of what everybody's going through. But then other people get the blessing of being able to pay it forward like you did, Darla. And we love that, but what we hear more than anything when we tell people what we do on an airplane or whatever is this is so needed. Because we've had 3 people find us by late at night, especially women, just saying, God, I just need to know you're there. I need a retreat. And they have literally Googled Christian divorce retreat. And we are the only thing that comes up other than an attorney. Mm-hmm. So we didn't realize we'd be one of a kind, but we love being able to be there.
The world.
And it doesn't matter if we've had people come 10 years out. It does not matter. And we just love to have you come.
Well, we appreciate what y'all do deeply. And I am looking forward to hearing what you listeners have to share with us. If you have any questions, if you have any ways that you'd like to give back or learn more about what Becky and Daniel Lehman do here with the WildStream Retreat, please reach out to us. We look forward to hearing from you because, like I said, right here, while we are dealing with women, we're dealing with courageous women, we're dealing with women who are entrepreneurs, they still have lives. And life is messy. Life can be really hard, and you're never supposed to go through it alone. And thank y'all for being there and partnering with so many people who've been through a very difficult time in their life they thought, and they may be thinking right now, my life's over. What do I do? My ministry's over. What am I going to do? I'm so ashamed. I'm so broken. And I want today to be your day of hope, of you understanding, oh, no, it's not. You've got so much left in you. And what they have to offer is a great springboard for all of this. Thank you so much, Becky. And thank y'all for listening. Thank you for being a part of our midweek Moxie here. It's been a delight to bring you another courageous lioness woman who is changing the world. And we look forward to seeing y'all next week. Bye-bye.